It's interesting you mentioned phones though, because we haven't touched on yet social media.
Yeah.
And so Elliot's question was, is it, I think I can't remember how you phrased it, Elliot, but is it something that is now more of a thing now? And I don't think we can have that conversation without addressing the impact of social media. Now, it's interesting, we're having this open conversation, not just because it's being filmed for daddy debates, but we also can't go on our phones. Now, could we be this open for this long if I didn't have my phone in my pocket? So you might be talking about, anyways, whatever. Let me do you see what I mean? And I just wonder, how much of a role does, because it's not just social media, it's technology. How much of a role does technology and by implication social media impact us in a negative sense? You talk about how in our youth it was go out and play. What was synonymous with that is we didn't have phones. And now we sound old when I say this, but I always use the example of, if you had friends as a young person back in the, whatever it was, 80s, early 90s, if they said meet somewhere, you went there because you didn't have another medium by which to say, well, I'll be 15 minutes late, or I'm going to come. You just had to be there. And if they left you because, well, boy, do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't want to be glib and say, oh, well, it's the rise of social media that's done it. But I do wonder how much.
I think a couple things on there. I think definitely the comparison is a massive thing. So we look online and we compare ourselves, our lives to someone's highlights. But also I think in terms of what you said around, it blocks that emotional connection. So Love is Blind, again on Netflix, right? Is a program. Have you seen it?
I've not seen it, but I've seen the tweets.
You heard about it. So basically, it's a program where this is not sponsored by Netflix, by the way. But it could be. Yeah. But so yeah, there's it's a program where two people will go in separate rooms, and then in between them there's like a blue kind of it's like a fountain thing, but they can't see through the mirror, right? And so they don't have their phones on them. They have a pad and pen so they can write notes and remember who they're talking to and whatnot. And they go in there, and the whole premise of the show is that they can't see each other, they don't know what each other look like, and they just have a conversation. And the whole thing is that they're going to get married in 4 weeks. Bit crazy, but whatever. But anyway, so the whole point is that they're sitting there talking, right? And then after like a week or so, they're like, oh my gosh, I love this person, dropping the L-bomb, and it's just, they've built this emotional connection. And part of you's thinking, what is this nonsense? Like, this is just rubbish, right? And the other half is like, actually, do you know what? In those conversations, they're going to a place where you wouldn't normally go with other people, because in normal life, you go on a date, you're in a restaurant, you have your phone, you have other people around, it's just them in a room with someone else. And all the distractions are like taken away. And in a way, I was like, actually, do you know what? I can see how maybe you would feel like you've got that emotional connection with someone, because you're probably talking about things that you may not have spoken to other people about. You may have known them for years, but with this one person where it's kind of curated, you're supposed to be talking in this depth, and there's no distractions, we build that emotional bond. And I do feel like nowadays, with our phones and just the distraction, there's a bit less of that like emotional connection with people, unless we like make the effort to really do it. So, for example, like having this conversation here, if we were just talking and it wasn't on a podcast, I don't know if we would be so open about it, and we would have each other's attention and listen to when to what everyone's saying, and not walk out or not tweet or not. Do you know what I mean? And I think so. Does social media have an impact, like in both ways? We look at highlights. We feel jealous. In you saw that Chucking Online podcast when Kojo was saying, a lot of people say they're depressed, they're just jealous. They're online looking at other people's lives. And I think that's a real thing. I think we do go on there, we see other people, and we think, I want to have that. And why isn't my life like that? Does that make us be depressed? I don't know. Does it make low mood? Probably. Definitely yes. There's been times I've been on social media and I come off and I'm like, I don't feel great. Do you know what I mean? That wasn't a great experience. I don't come off feeling like, do you know what I mean? I feel a bit like, I could have.
As adults, we are able to apply some filter to that. So we can go on and we can still have, our mood may not be great as a result of seeing someone posting lavish holidays, house, and the highlights ultimately. But we have the filter to still recognize that's just been a very carefully curated image, or it's actually, it doesn't exist. It's just made specifically for social media. If you've got someone else who's younger, they don't have that filter. They just see it, and they take it at face value, because we live in a world where we've known otherwise before social media. We've known just going out, and it's not always like that. But if you've got a generation that don't know any different, and when you're younger, your experience is just limited anyway, that if so many of your experiences are comprised of what you see on a screen, you'll take a lot of that as at face value. And that's bound to make someone feel inadequate, and to feel, well, I'm not meeting that expectation, or I'm not able to portray myself in that way, therefore I'm not good enough. And we've all seen the videos of people talking about what they've got, what you should have, how if you haven't got this, then like you're not moving correctly. If you're a teenager, that's a really dangerous message to hear. That if you haven't got this, then you aren't good enough, you know. And that's the message that's being pushed out by a lot in social media. So I think, to go back to Elliott's question, it does exacerbate it, because it amplifies some of the things that already existed. They existed before, but it just amplifies them. But I think it's also very difficult to quantify, because, like we've all said, so many of those factors that we experience now today maybe just didn't fit as neatly into the lives of yesteryear, where our work patterns were quite different. A 9 to 5 was still a thing back then. You know, literally, I'd come in, I'd take an hour's lunch break, I finish, I go home, I have family time. We don't really have that anymore. We have our lives are populated with so many more things that, of course, it will create more of a toll on our mental health. So it's very difficult to compare the two. But then there are probably things that we aren't having to experience that the previous generation did. You know, if you think about the immigrant experience of coming to this country post-war, which my grandparents, all of our grandparents' parents experienced, what you would have had to endure throughout the day. And I think particularly as men, how much it's damaged men of our fathers and grandparents' generation, because they wouldn't talk about it. But imagine being at home and you're alpha male at home, and then almost being brought down in the workplace, in the outside world, because as a person of colour, you are not seen in the same regard. That's going to have an impact on so much, because when you come home, you're almost demanding, I need to elevate how masculine I actually am, to compensate for what I may have lost out on in having to toe the line in a job because I needed to get that paycheck. And I think when you talk about the conversation amongst men, it's perpetual. It's for men. We aren't having those conversations and haven't had those conversations for such a long time, that in our generation, if we don't start having those conversations, it's just another generation of men who have that mental health that's been so damaged because we've just not discussed it.
Nathaniel, how do you feel about kind of social media, and do you feel like in your personal journey it's been a hindrance or a good thing?
I feel like it's a double-edged sword. I think it's maybe easier to deal with when you're older, because you have that control, like Arion said, like, you know, you can look at something and be like, well, this costs this much, so you kind of have that. I feel like you have some real life experience to judge how things have been achieved. And there's a good book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Talks about building habits and stuff. But one thing he talked about social media was, you know, before, when you moved to areas, you left your friends behind because you didn't know your new number. And like even knowing their numbers wasn't really a thing. So you just leave, and then you live your life, and you don't really, you might become this new person, reinvent yourself, or just grow and be the same. But you never really reconnected with those older people, changed schools, same sort of thing, get new jobs, same sort of things. Like with social, we now keep these social circles we have with us essentially for our whole life. And that's weird. We can only like maintain so many relationships with people. So I think that's interesting on one thing, where recently I described myself as feeling socially stretched. I was doing lots of things, seeing lots of people. It's like the amount of friends I have is great, but I only have a lot of these friends because of social media. which is good and bad. So I think when we talk about the kids, it's that when we do sessions at school, sometimes it's about telling them the importance of actually, if something doesn't make you feel good after you've seen it, like you talk about going on Instagram and just feeling crap afterwards. It's like we tell them, we give them that okay of like, actually, if this doesn't make you feel good, you don't have to don't actually have to look at it if you don't want to. Particularly for our body image sessions, you don't, if you look at this other person that makes you feel ugly, then you don't have to look at that person, right? Like, they're not even in your life. Like, they're in LA. They're in LA, or they're older than you, or whatever. So we kind of give them that okay of, no, this doesn't have to be for you, or this thing that you have to become or internalize. So we try and give them those things that we have that we know that's not real, or that's been achieved a certain way. Like, it's passing on that knowledge, I guess. So yeah, in terms of, that's the bad stuff. It's like how it can make people feel down, like compare themselves. I think the good stuff is, people can really find communities online. Particularly, whether it's, because growing up, I grew up in Hackney, and I was always around my people essentially. But you might be from only black in the village. Like, online might be the place where you see other black people. You kind of like find your community that way, because there's no one else around, and whether it's like getting advice on what products to buy or whatever. So it's good for those sorts of things. And like, I've definitely connected to, I think, to maybe. I wouldn't have done Carnival last year had it not been for the friends I've made through social media, or the way I did Carnival.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. I saw the pictures. You were on those chocolate photos, right? It looked like you were anyway.
Yeah, so Sunday.
I was scrolling through your Instagram late last night, like deep in your Instagram, man.
Yeah, like,
I was deep in there.
I wouldn't have done.
I saw the Carnival pictures.
I wouldn't have done. It's weird. So I wouldn't have done Jab had it not been for my friend Alex, who I met through Twitter, and I wouldn't have known a bit more about Carnival because I went to this event that was put on by a company that I only know through social. So it can also help you find yourself, but it can help you lose yourself at the same time. So
I guess we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for
had it not been for that DM.
Yeah, exactly.
Just one thing that keeps swirling in my head. We kind of loosely touched it, but not properly gone in on it. We're talking about our own kind of mental health and whatnot. I distinctly remember around, my friends would probably say different, but I'm going to say either side of 30, feeling pretty shit about everything. And I can't remember, because I went down the NHS route of like, this is how you know the NHS. That's when I first realised the NHS was properly overstretched. So I went down the NHS route, like filling the forms. Is it IPAT? IAPT? IAPT. Fill in the forms, and then they come back to you and they're like, well, either you can do a computer course, or you can go to a group session around CBT, etc. And I even did at Birkbeck University, I did like a counselling course for a year, just because I wanted to get a bit of a deeper understanding about it all. And looking back at all of that now, when Nathaniel said worthlessness, because that's what I was feeling, huge worthlessness, but I'd even say pointlessness about life. Not even me personally. I was just thinking, this life is pointless. Like, I don't get what the point of life is. And I look back and I go, is that a male specific? It's not male specific, but hear me out. As a guy, are we hamstrung by feeling we are supposed to have achieved? So with some women, not all, with some women, they're hamstrung by the maternal, biological, I'm supposed to have done X, I'm going to focus on child rearing. For some women, I hasten to add, just in case anyone's listening, for some women, there's a big thing about it, and it can affect them as they get older. Is the male equivalent, I don't know what the male equivalent is, but there's some male equivalent of, I'm supposed to have achieved X.
Yeah.
And when I just distinctly remember getting to 30 thinking, is this it? What have I been doing for the last... And just feeling a massive weight of just like... I can't describe it as anything other than just thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. There has to be, but I don't know where it came from. And now my response to it was to leave the country. And I went to live in China. And in many ways, that was probably even a form of depression in itself, because I tore myself away from anybody who knew me, went to a brand new culture, didn't know anybody there, didn't speak the language, didn't even talk to anyone back here, and just disappeared, basically. And part of me did it on purpose because I was there for about 6 months. And part of me did it on purpose because I wanted to get off the grid. I didn't want to disappear in the worst sense of the word, but there was an overwhelming sense of, I don't want anybody to see me, know me, talk to me, so I'm going to go as far away as I possibly can and basically have no communication with anybody and just get on with life. Now I look back now and go, yeah, I was probably depressed. But at the time, it was an escape. It was escapism, and I link it back now to a sense of just not valuing or feeling like I hadn't achieved what I was supposed to achieve as a man. Maybe I don't know. And I don't know if we're trapped in that.
No, I relate to that, 'cause I feel like that age is a mad age actually in terms of late 20. Yeah, sorry. It's a safe space. But now that age, for me personally, that is a mad age. 'Cause I think it's weird when you're a teenager, you're at school. Yeah, you can do whatever. Everyone's kind of equal to an extent. And then I went to uni. I was 18 to 21. Some people didn't go to uni, whatever. But you still feel like you're, no one's bought a house yet. Most people didn't bought a house. Maybe they ain't had kids yet. No one's got married yet. Early 20s, kind of going into a career. Yeah, some people would maybe start to buy houses or whatnot, but most people are just on that same, normally living at home or whatnot. Do you know what I mean? And then when it comes to like late 20s, that's when I felt like, for me, it was like, okay, people that we were just all here yesterday. And now everyone around you is seemingly like doing better. People have got married, people have got kids, people have bought houses and whatnot. Yeah. And if you haven't done any of those things, you kind of start feeling like, oh shit, like, am I behind now? Do you know what I mean? And for me, there was a point where even though I was engaged at 28, so I was at home, I was living at home, I was engaged. And even for me, there was a point where I was like, bro, I'm still at home. I'm still living at home at 28, 29. I thought by then I would have it sorted. I was like 2 houses. I was like, bro, I'm still in the same bedroom that I used to come home and bring my friends around in year 6. Like, how am I still in the same bedroom? The posters have gone down now, whatever, but I'm still in the same bedroom. And then, even though I was engaged and I had plans to obviously get married and whatever, I was still kind of like, wow. And I remember when my parents' friends would come over, and I just feel a bit ashamed, like they'd come over and I'd come downstairs and be like, hi, and then I know their kids have gone out already, and they probably weren't looking at me any sort of way, but I felt like, I'm a grown man now, I'm sure you're looking at me like, why the hell is Elliot still here, sort of thing. And so that was a bit of a weird time. I don't say I was depressed or anything, but it was a bit low. And anyway, so I ended up getting married, we moved out, had a kid, and then we were going to buy a house, but the house prices were too expensive, so we ended up moving back home again. So I went back to the same room, but this time with a wife and child. So I was like, you thought you got rid of me, hey?
In some cultures, that would be the norm. So,
Yeah, and for me, it was okay because I knew that we had a plan and we were going to go out again. But it was that kind of moment where I was like, oh, actually, this could be a low point. Do you know what I mean? Back in the same. And, me and my parents have got on well at the beginning, and then I think they got a bit tired of us being in the house. So, but I think it's a mad point. And then when we bought our house and stuff, and it's like, okay, cool, I finally feel like an adult now. Like 33 or whatever it was, I finally feel like, not necessarily an adult, but I am where I'm maybe expected to be. But I think there is that age, that is that kind of like late 20s. I mean,
it speaks of, is there an internal anxiety, which can spiral, of course, where we all feel, all human beings, that we're supposed to be working to a life plan that we haven't necessarily agreed to, but we're judged by some plan in our head. So maybe part of the conversation that we're missing out on mental health is debunking that and that's why I think this next generation have it better, in so much as right now, this current youth generation, they're just exploring whatever they want to explore. They're doing their own thing. They aren't constrained as much. A 15-year-old can create an Instagram page that has 70,000 followers, and they're just doing their thing. They're not constrained by I must do X. And I think the one thing that I look back on, well, possibly, but
that in itself becomes the new measure.
the new, yeah.
I've written like quite a lot about this. These arbitrary measures we have in society that we all gauge ourselves. Have I bought a house? Have I got children? Am I married? Am I doing X, Y, Z by X point? These are arbitrary markers. I was having this conversation with one of my best friends recently, and he's doing so well, like in life. Just like he's got a really good job, and he was saying, yeah, but you've got like a family, and like, but we can't have the path that we follow being the same path as someone else. And it can be, but we can't measure our own success against someone else's path. Because I could look at his life and say, well, there's that element of your life that is going so well. But we all have a different path in what we do. And we all have those things that we should brightly celebrate. But we just have these arbitrary markers that we tell ourselves, yes, you're doing okay. And it's empty, it's meaningless. And what I do worry about for the new generation is they will have different markers. So you might have a teenager who's like, well, I've only got 1,000 followers on whatever social media platform it is. It's not good enough. Whereas 20 years ago, it might have been, I haven't bought a house or I haven't done X, Y, Z by a certain point. And I mean, you say rightly, should we be having a conversation around debunking that? But that may arguably always exist.
Yeah.
When you think about it, not to kind of get too like political, but when you look at capitalism, the success of it is based on comparing one person's literally worth, to another and saying, I want more. And the reason why it's successful is because that's almost wired into us as wanting what the next person has, or deeming what some people have at X level is what we should all be attaining. And rightly or wrongly, that will probably exist. I think the bigger conversation is how do we give our own journeys the value that they deserve, and not say that we're going to limit what our worth is based on someone else's narrative or an arbitrary measure that just should be worthless to us.
And Nathaniel, how do you feel about those in terms of measuring and life milestones?
Like an older friend said to me, a similar thing, like, you're talking about paths, where they were like, you can't look at other people's boxes in terms of that's their life box and that's their life box. As you can't look into their boxes for like your own happiness or fulfillment. When you talk about age and everything, it's like, is that thing of people having babies, but I feel like I've really tried hard over the last couple of years to just be like, oh, am I happy? Do I feel good? Like that's got to be my thing, because the other stuff doesn't matter. If I can't feel good like marriage, kids, that's all great on paper for me. But if I don't actually, what's the point in doing all those things if I don't actually feel like nice for it? So I've always got to put that as my priority, because that feeds into, like, I feel like when I'm talking about spending money on therapy or that, it costs this much money. I'm like, but once I'm not spending more money on that, I'm gonna make my other money so much quicker and all that, because I'm in a better place, because I feel better in myself. And so yeah, my marker's got to be me. That's where I've got to look for my happiness, is me. Not, I can't look at those milestones. I think they will always exist, but in terms of how damaging they are to you to look at, that's what's got to change. Because I feel like there's nothing wrong with aspirations to like want stuff, but when those things aren't realistic or unachievable, or just so like far removed from your life, then what's it really doing?
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think so I completely hear that, and I think even when you do get those things that you think you want, it's like it's the next thing, and it's maintaining that, because everything comes with a price to an extent. Do you know what I mean? Like I mentor a few people at work and whatnot, and some people, they want to like become really senior really quickly, and it's like, understanding that when you get to that level, don't get me wrong, you get paid more and you get more status and you get more gravitas and whatnot, but it comes at a price. Do you know what I mean? You have to consistently be someone every day. Some days you're not in the mood, but you're paid to be that person. Do you know what I mean? And that takes a toll on your well-being, because you don't get to pick and choose how you feel that day. You've got to turn up and perform to a certain level and be consistent. And yeah, I feel like this conversation's been so good, man. Like, thanks guys for being open, for partaking. Obviously we've spoken about a lot of serious things, so I think it is responsible that we should say that if people are like triggered by this, or that's not our intention at all. But if you do feel like you need to seek more help, then we'll put some links to resources and charities at the end of this video as well. I mean, is there anything else that you wanted to leave the people with before we sign out?
I think when you were talking about vulnerability earlier, I think one thing I've learned and struggled with myself over the years is that to know and believe that there's strength in vulnerability. Like, I think that when I was growing up, it was that was weak, but now it's actually that for me, like, being able to open up and being vulnerable, that's actually that's a strong thing. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, mine would be, I'd say to so many people, secure your happiness. All the talk that you see, secure the bag, secure your happiness, and because that's the damaging message. It could be.
I was going to say, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we should trademark it. Yeah. But it's so important. It's like whatever's going to secure you having good mental health and taking care of your well-being, that's what you need to secure. And everything else, as difficult as it might be in some instances, you need to try and push that to the background and put what's going to make me happy, not what will portray me to be happy, but what will make me happy, and just pursuing that. That's the most important thing. And I think once more of us do that, we'll start having better conversations and we'll start having better mental health as a result of it.
I think everything's pretty much been covered, so the only thing I would add is just similar to what we've just done here. I think a good starting point for anybody who's feeling low or down about something is find your people that you can have a secure space to just have open conversations. I was going to say put the phones away, but it sounds stupid to say so, but that's where we're at in society at the moment. You have to be able to have a distractionless, open conversation with your people. And I saw something around, I live in South London, I saw something advertised about a couple of months ago. I didn't go to it, but I thought it was so powerful. It was this group, and all it said on the poster was, I can't remember the exact wording, but effectively it was a group that was advertising for men who wanted a space to just come and talk. It wasn't like a counselling group, it was just a discussion group, and it was like in one of the local venues around my area. And it was like, you can just come and have a conversation. I was like, we probably need more of things like that. Where it's not even about a profit thing, it's just a come and have a conversation and a space and open up about what's going on.
That's a great way to end. So thanks for listening. Thanks for staying with us. We've been Daily Debates Podcast, brought to you by musicfootballfatherhood.com. So join the discussion, #Daily Debates on Twitter, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at @MFFonline_. It's been an amazing session. Hope you've enjoyed it. Peace out.